Kepa for Mendy and other disastrous substitution backfires. For absolutely no reason, here is a list of some terrible substitutions in no way inspired by current events. Ali Dia for Matt Le Tissier, Southampton v Leeds, November 23, 1996. The classic. The man, the myth, the legend. A byword for rank incompetence, the man himself for his lack of ability, and the credulous, lazy madness of a club falling for such a nonsense. No wonder Graham Souness is so angry all the time. Also very funny that the man Ali Dia replaced as Southampton's greatest ever player turned COVID denier Matt Le Tissier, who would later describe Dia's performance as like Bambi on ice and fucking hopeless. Somehow lasted from the 32nd to 85th minute before being replaced himself, despite it being very obvious long before that Souness and Southampton had been scammed and that the recommendation was not from George Wee. Souness's response after Leeds' 2-0 win was straightforward: "I do not have any strikers. Am I enjoying this? Do you enjoy a kick in the bullocks?" Kepa for Edouard Mendy, Chelsea via Liverpool, February 27, 2022. I mean, there's recency bias here, but there's also narrative bias and hilarity bias and backstory bias, and the sheer perfection of it. Even without anything else, making the try hard, look at me decision to bring on a keeper specifically for a penalty shootout only for that keeper to watch 11 penalties sail past him before hooning his own spot kick high into the North London sky is pretty hard to top. It is quite literally impossible for that substitution to go more wrong, even if you aren't bringing on a keeper who infamously refused to come off in the same competition 3 years earlier. Throw in the icing on the cake of the tournament in question being the Carabao, the greatest football tournament on earth, and you've got not just a new number one terrible substitution, but one that simply cannot ever be bettered. Damien Duff, Frank Lampard and Eidur Gudjohnsen for Joe Cole, Thiago, and Jeremy. Newcastle v Chelsea, February 20, 2005. In hindsight, a foreshadowing of the comical, pitiful figure Jose Mourinho would later become, but at the time quite an alarming error from arguably the finest manager on earth at the time. This was Mourinho at his performative worst long before that was all he had left, responding to his Chelsea side, the best in the country at the time, being a single goal behind to a Newcastle side that was not. Chelsea would go on to win the Premier League title with just a single defeat to their name, but missed out on the chance of adding the FA Cup thanks in large part to Mourinho's half-time temper tantrum at St James Park. 3 half-time substitutions, none injury enforced, was always an unnecessary risk against a side that would finish the season down in 14th place. When Wayne Bridge left the field on a stretcher 2 minutes into the second half, Mourinho's gamble had dramatically backfired. Chelsea were down to 9 when Carlo Cudicini was sent off, and by the end of the game both Duff and William Gallas were limping around the pitch just to keep Chelsea's numbers vaguely sensible. They never did find that equalizer. Steven Gerrard for Adam Lallana, Liverpool v Manchester United, March 22, 2015. Gerrard's last game against Manchester United for Liverpool was certainly memorable. Brief, but memorable. It lasted 38 seconds in all, long enough for Gerrard to boot Juan Mata up in the air before stamping on Ander Herrera's leg and receiving an inevitable red card. First half spent sat on the bench watching a listless, lifeless Liverpool limp to the break. Fortunate to be just a goal behind had clearly been all too much for Gerrard, whose determination to impose himself on the game after Brendan Rodgers called on him for the second half to liven things up perhaps went a touch too far. That said, it almost kind of worked. Gerrard's audacious, stud-heavy cameo did wake Liverpool from their slumbers, and the second half was a far more even contest despite Liverpool's now reduced numbers. They still lost 2-1, though. Simone Zaza for Giorgio Chiellini, Germany v Italy, July 2, 2016. Before there was Marcus Rashford, before there was Jadon Sancho, before there was Mark Noble, there was Simone Zaza. The Italian came on specifically for spot kicks in the last knockings of the Euro 2016 quarter-final against Germany, issued instructions to his goalkeeper and then, in the shootout, performed a stuttering run-up before slapping his penalty high over the bar. The sheer cockiness of it all before it all went horribly wrong sets a standard that future penalty specialist failures just can't compete with. Restored his dignity and reputation by leaving Juventus on loan for West Ham, where he played 11 games without scoring. Lionel Messi for Lisandro Lopez, Hungary v Argentina, August 16, 2005. It's an embarrassment, they're not going to call me up anymore, was an 18-year-old's initial, crestfallen, mortified reaction to a red card picked up less than 3 minutes into his international debut. He might have been right about the embarrassment, but Lionel Messi was wrong about the second bit. He's been called up another 157 times since, finally ending his wait for international silverware in last year's Copa America. Handy player by all accounts, and his dismissal so soon after replacing Lisandro Lopez was a bit mad really, the Barcelona starlet doing little more than shrug off the close attentions of Vilmos Vanchak, who promptly threw himself to the ground. Alan Smith for Gary Lineker. England v Sweden, June 17, 1992. Back before football was invented, bad substitutions were already taking place. We could go back even further to Bobby Charlton's withdrawal in the 1970 World Cup quarter-final, but let's not go completely insane. To the summer of 1992, a time when MOTD host and banterous Twitter nightmare Gary Lineker was still very much a footballer. Lineker had already announced his international retirement before the 1992 Euros and went into the tournament on 48 goals, needing one more to tie Charlton's England record and two to take it outright. England's first two games ended goalless, meaning they needed to win the final game against Sweden to reach the last four and extend Lineker's career. The famed goal poacher set up England's early opening goal for David Platt, but things went wrong after that. England still led at halftime, but were not playing well and struggling to retain possession. Sweden leveled soon after halftime and continued to dominate the game. Graham Taylor needed to make a change, but knew the one he had to make was high risk and would be highly contentious. He made the decision to bring on Alan Smith with the idea of improving England's ability to keep the ball at the right end of the pitch. That meant removing Lineker, and if a winning goal couldn't be found, ending his international career. Future Leeds legend Tomas Brolin duly scored the winner for Sweden, and, while Taylor's decision was perfectly justifiable in pure footballing terms, he was a turn-up and that was that.